Good morning, everybody. It is Mr. Daugherty here. You are in the right place, and we're going to start the orientation in about 10 minutes. We'll see you then. Good morning, Todd, parents and guardians. Mr. Daugherty here. Thank you so much for joining me on this orientation. I know that many of you have already viewed the slideshow that I'm going to go through this morning. I've kind of changed things up. If you've been looking at the slideshow, you've probably seen those changes because I thought there's so much to cover. Typically in orientation, we would have lots of staff members and we'd have time for, it would be a more comprehensive orientation in terms of meeting staff, but it would need to be a long time because there's so much to cover with the new changes. So we've kind of adjusted things. We're going to have Mr. Cormier's with me. I'm going to have him put up the slideshow, and you'll see that my introductions are a lot more limited than they were. But we're going to get going. So what we're going to cover for the orientation is basically just the nuts and bolts of what the school year is going to look like, at least for quarter one. I know there's been a lot of changes. There's been lots of information given at board meetings. So I want to make sure that everybody's clear about what Todd Middle School is going to look like. I want to reiterate my thanks to everybody for your support and for your patience and your flexibility. And I'm looking forward to a school year. I think we're going to make the best of this situation. And we have great kids in the school, and we have great parent support and awesome teachers. So I know we're going to make the best of it. So why don't we first start looking at the agenda? So like I said, very brief introductions because it's only going to be me and Nurse Cars, but we're going to go over schedules. We're going to go over safety. We're going to go over health protocols. We're going to talk a bit about counseling and grades, breakfast and lunch, clubs and sports, and then some miscellaneous information that we're going to go over. Okay. So you've got myself here. We're going to have Mr. Cormier's right over there working with me, and Miss Cars is going to join us as well. Before we move on to the rest of the slides, just grab that emailed address, because if you have questions along the way, you can send them to that email address, and at the end of the orientation, I'll go through them and start answering the questions that we got during the orientation. If you're viewing this orientation afterwards, not live, that's fine. You can email questions to the address, and I will answer the questions. Somebody will get back to you on them, okay? Because I know that there's a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty. And hopefully over the last week or so, you've started to get some more clarity about how things will look at Todd, and hopefully this will help as well. Okay, so everybody has seen this. This is the school schedule. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday are remote for all learners at Todd Middle School. So all students are at home. They're not coming into the building. And Thursday and Friday, we have our in-person days for cohort A and cohort B. And then we have the students who are all remote, which is right now it's just about a third of the students, a little less than a third of the students are fully remote at this point, okay? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So this is the remote schedule that we're using. And you're going to notice very different if you're in if you have a 7th or 8th grade student, this schedule is very different than last year. So last year we had to cover going over 2 days. This is a more straightforward schedule. It is beginning at 7:45 for homeroom and going through till 3 o'clock like a regular day. But there are going to be some changes. One thing you'll notice is the periods are 30 minutes instead of 40. The other thing you'll see is that there's 10 minutes in between classes. And the reason for both of those is we know that remote learning, it can drain you, and you can't really sustain that much, screen time straight. So we're trying to build in more breaks, build in class periods that are more manageable. So that's the schedule. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that is what it looks like. At one point, you might have saw some Wednesday schedules that had like mornings, that had like teacher professional development time. That was only for hybrid 2. Hybrid 1, everybody's following this schedule. It's the same schedule Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Studio art is still going to meet. So if you're in 8th grade, if you have a child who's an 8th grade student in studio art, they're going to meet before school. You see the times and the days. And homeroom meets only for students who have a homeroom class. Okay, so remotely, unless you have health, reading, or an AIS class, and that'll be on your schedule, which I'll show you in a little bit, you don't have to go to homeroom. But I will tell you that many of our first period classes have homerooms as well. And if the teacher invites you, you can come, but it's not going to be something you have to come. So unless you have a homeroom class, your day begins Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 8:10. So everybody see that? Period one. Unless you have a homeroom class, which is health, reading, or AIS. Okay. This is the Thursday, Friday schedule. Okay. So different than, and this is our same as our in-person schedule at Todd Middle School. So when you're here in person, that is your normal day. So that's been the day, that's the schedule we've been using for years. So you'll notice that we're going to the normal 40-minute period. So whether you are at home or in school, you're following the schedule. So on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when the day begins at 8:10, on Thursday and Friday, period one, it begins at 8:03. So everybody see that? So you're going to be coming into school for homeroom for the in-person, but for the remote learner, the day begins at 8:03 unless you've got a homeroom class. Okay. And the other thing you're going to see on here is I put a little asterisk next to the end times because the end times could change a little bit for social distancing. We're going to see that once we have students in the building. We're going to have to measure because there's going to be about 120 to 130 students in the building instead of 340. So there's a big reduction of the number of students in the building. So I'm pretty sure we're going to need more than 3 minutes to get everybody to their next class and being safe and having social distancing. So those times may change, but we'll do that sort of, it'll be done in the classroom. So we'll be making announcements. So just be aware of that. But those beginning of the classes are going to remain the same. So that'll be throughout. And whether you are in person or remote, you're following this schedule. Okay. So that is what it looks like. The expectation is going to be that at those times you are in your class for that period because we're taking attendance every period, pretty much. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So because attendance is being taken, so it's very important that your child is, if it's a remote learner, that the child is in the class on Google Classroom and in a Google Meet at those times. Okay. And I want to talk a little bit about instruction. You know, this has been something that we've talked about at many of the board meetings. So there is synchronous instruction and there's asynchronous instruction. Synchronous instruction, it means that it's live. So that means that the students with the teacher and that the students doing work at the same time that the class period is occurring. Most instruction is going to be synchronous. Synchronous could be a live stream like what I'm doing right now. So a student could be watching me, and then if it was a Google Meet, they could be interacting with me, talking back, and we could be having conversation. That's a live stream. That's done with a Google Meet. So that is one type of synchronous instruction. Another type is that work is being provided through Google Classroom and that the teacher is going to be available during the class period to help remote learners. So what could happen is the class begins with a Google Meet because we're going to take attendance. And the only way to take attendance is to have the student present in the Google Meet. So the teacher takes attendance. Teacher knows that the student's here. Teacher explains, all right, we're going to say it's an English class. We're going to continue to read Midsummer Night's Dream, Act 3. I want everybody to take a look at Act 3, Scene 1. And I'm going to come back to everybody in about 15 minutes. We'll ask any questions. You can put any comments you have in the Google chat, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. That teacher could be then helping students in class, and then they're going to come back and work with the students that are remote. So it might not be that like it's just you have a live stream with a camera rolling the whole time during the entire class, which is kind of the way it is when you're actually in school, because when you're in school in a classroom for 40 minutes, you're not watching the teacher teach for 40 minutes. The teacher will do instruction, but then you'll work on things. So when students remotely are working on things, you know, the stream might be shut off while they're working with students in the class, and then go back and give time also to the students who are working remotely. But there can also be times where you're doing a full classroom discussion and you have the students in front of you answering questions, and students on the Google Meet are also interacting with the entire class. You can also have things where we're doing group work, where one group member's in the classroom and two group members are at home. So there's lots of creative things you can do with technology, and we're working on those, but a lot of this is something that's new, not just for Todd Middle School, it's new for everyone in New York State and everyone in the United States and everybody in the world, because hybrid learning is not something that has been a traditional model of education. So we are, breaking new ground, but I'm very confident in not only my teachers' abilities, but also your children's. So I think where there's going to be adjustments, but so kind of just know that that's what it'll look like. Also, the other thing could be a combination, which is what I just kind of talked about, which is kind of like some live streaming, some checking in at a later time, but it's all done during the period. So if your child has math period 2 on Thursday or Friday and they're a remote learner, at 8:46, they're going to be on the Google Meet and the Google Classroom with their math teacher. Okay. So asynchronous instruction. So asynchronous means it's not happening at the same time. So a lesson could be given on Google Classroom, but the student does it at a later time and the teacher's providing availability at a later time. That can happen too, depends on the situation. That's a little more difficult for both the teacher to manage and also for the student to manage, because the best time to give instruction and to have teacher availability is during the class period. Okay, so asynchronous but there could be things where I'm doing a science lab and I'm bringing kids outside or something as part of the lab, and my Wi-Fi, I don't have the Wi-Fi outside. I might then say, all right, you're going to work on this, and then later on today during your lunch period or during extra help, remote learners are going to get together with me and we're going to work on this together at that point. So something like that could happen. Okay, so the student schedule, this is more for 6th grade parents, 7th and 8th grade parents. Your children know how to follow this. It might be confusing to you, but they know how to follow this. But you're going to see that the student schedule, the most important things are the period is pretty self-explanatory. The course and the teacher are. Where it gets a little confusing are the days and the term. So those two columns get a little confusing. So some classes run only on an even day or an odd day. So we basically go through the whole year going odd day, even day, right through the whole year. Many classes do both, but some do only one. So it's kind of like the equivalent of meeting for half the year. It's just spread out over the full year. So you'll see for this particular 6th grade student, period 3, they have on even days, they have physical education, and on odd days, they have French. Student has French. So that means that they kind of go back and forth between those two classes every other day. Okay. The terms are basically the quarters, and most classes meet all 4 quarters except for the 4 encore classes. Sometimes they're called specials, but you'll see you've got technology, computer, art, and family and consumer science. They are all period 6 for this student. So that just gives you the different quarters that the student has that class. So this student, for example, quarter 1 is going to have technology with Mr. Young in the shop room. Okay. And that meets both every day, odd and even, because they've got both. Okay. So that's what the schedule looks like. Some important pieces about remote learning, and I talked about this a little bit in a previous slide, but it's important to sign on to Google Meet from Google Classroom, because that's like walking into the classroom. So if you're a remote learner and this is your schedule, when you, at the time that the class is, you've got to be there. You're going to review the assignments and announcements on Google Classroom. That's like looking at the blackboard in a classroom. Same thing. And it's very important to be class on time and to be ready to learn, because the remote days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the periods are only 30 minutes. And Thursday, Friday, the periods are 40 minutes. So we've got a lot to cover, and we need you there on time and ready to learn. So as parents and guardians, please reiterate this to your child, that when they're following the schedule, it is just like being in school. So in the spring, it was different. Some things were more asynchronous. Students weren't necessarily always at the class period at the time that it was. That's different this year. This is more just like regular school. They need to follow the schedule, and they need to be out to the class on time at the beginning of the class period. Okay, I talked about this in the previous slide. So odd and even days typically just run one then the other. So they just alternate throughout the year. What we've done is we've just made a couple of slight adjustments. They're not very big. We will be telling students and parents every day on morning announcements, it's an odd day or it's an even day. So you're never going to not know which one it is. It'll be easily available. It'll be on the remote site. So that's not going to be a problem. We just made slight adjustments because we want to make sure that the even and odd days are throughout the quarter, that the Thursday and Fridays line up. So just to give you an example of a minor adjustment. So if you look at Friday the 25th, that's an even day. Since we're off on Monday, the Tuesday the 29th should be an odd day, but we're making it an even day because if you go to the October, you're going to see that we want to keep going back and forth between even and odd. So you see how we do that? So we're doing that just to keep that going. And if we go over to November, we'll see that what we've done is we've ended up with having exactly the same amount of in-person odd and even days. And then the total odd and even days are pretty close. We've got 20 and 23. The best that we would have is 21 and 22. So it's really close enough. So that schedule, though, will be available. And it's something that it seems complicated, but the odd and even, students get the hang of that pretty quickly. Okay, so let's talk about some safety building issues. So we are going to be daily cleaning. We're going to be cleaning rooms, bathrooms, common areas. Obviously, Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, we don't have students in the building. Thursday, Friday, we'll be cleaning, we'll be cleaning after each day. We'll be cleaning during the day. We are going to have extra custodial help because the high school's 2 in-person days are Tuesday, Wednesday. Ours is Thursday, Friday. So we're going to be in really good shape to make sure that we are keeping the building both clean and disinfected. Okay. Signage will be around the building. Signage is going to include reminders of masks. It's going to include reminders of hand washing and hand sanitizing. It's going to be reminders of social distancing. And you saw some of that in the video that I made earlier this week. And also on that video, you probably saw the floor markings and directional arrows, and we'll also have plenty of staff members out there helping with that. We, as I mentioned, we're probably going to do the releasing at the end of the period. The timings might be different. We'll have to see how that works. Desk placemats. So I have one here. We have, the district has purchased enough of these for every class, for every period. So we'll kind of put one of these down on each desk at the beginning of the period. It might already be there and kind of torn away at the end of the period, but basically every period, a student's going to have a new clear desk mat that is new, that hasn't been used before. And then at the end of the period, they'll throw that desk placemat out and have another fresh one put down. So that way every day there's kind of every period there's a clean space for a student to work on. Water fountains, I mentioned this in the video, the bubblers have been turned off, but I encourage you to send your child with a water bottle so that way they can fill water up using the water bottle dispenser. Obviously, if students need a drink and don't have a bottle, we'll give them a cup or something so that way they can, we want to make sure that they are, that if they're thirsty, that we have that available for them. Okay, we're going to start off with no lockers. That's something that we'll look at once we have students in the building. We know that, we're going to be doing hybrid 1 through the end of Q1. And we know that, inclement weather or colder weather is going to require more clothing. So we're going to have to visit that to see if there is a way that we can use lockers and maintain social distancing. We'll know more of that when we kind of get a feel for what it's like to have 120 to 130 students in the building. And maybe it's something that we use lockers twice a day, right? When they come in and when they leave. So we'll explore that over the next month. I mentioned hand cleaning and sanitizing in addition to the bathrooms. There will also be hand sanitizing stations. There'll also be hand sanitizing available in classrooms. So that'll be all available. There'll be plenty of reminders to students because we know that it's very, that it's very important to have to be sanitizing your hands and to be wearing your mask. It is very important. Class materials will be sanitized before they're used again. Due to the reduction of the number of students, we should be in a pretty good shape with materials. And like I mentioned, having less students means we have more supervision available for to watch kids. Okay, arrival and dismissal. So buses, there are no high school buses running the same day, which is good. That means we'll know that our buses are on time and they've already been sanitized from the night before. They're going to be cleaned daily. There's less students. They'll be practicing social distancing, and there will also be hand sanitizing available on the bus. So just be aware of that. We are going to be doing staggered releases from the buses. So as the buses arrive, the students will be immediately leaving the bus and coming into the building, where we'll be making sure that they are practicing social distancing while they're in here before they go to homeroom. And we will have a separate entrance for the walker and drop off. So we'll probably have them go through the 6th grade wing for those of you who are familiar with the grounds here at Todd. So that way we're making sure that we have plenty of social distancing in place as you enter the building. We'll have supervision at the pickup area, which we usually do anyway, but we'll have more out there. We're not going to have in-person after-school clubs, and I'll get to that in a later slide. So pretty much daily on Thursday, Friday, all students are going to be dismissed at 2:30, though we will see where we are at with sports come mid-September. And I think our next slide is going to be Nurse Cars. So I'd like to introduce Alyssa Cars. For those of you who don't know her, she is the school nurse here at Todd, and she's going to go over some health and safety protocols. I know she's going to give you a lot of information, so don't worry. You don't need to take notes right now because you'll be able to get that information later. We're going to be sending out documents next week, but she's going to go over some things for you, and she'll also be available at the end of our presentation to answer questions.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everybody. Like Dan said, I'm just going to go over some of the main bullet points of how the health office is going to be running this year. First and foremost, morning screenings. We're going to be using an app called Pinpoint to do screenings for the parents to fill out at home prior to the student coming to the building. This app is pretty straightforward, easy to use, just answering yes or no questions regarding recent exposure, if they've had any symptoms in the last 14 days, and any travel that may have happened over the last 14 days as well. Once the screening has been completed, we will be notified here at the school so we know whether or not your student can be admitted into the building. If for some reason you forget or anything like that, the student will be pulled into the health office for the screening to be conducted here in my health office. School appropriate masks and mask breaks. The students are required to wear masks all day here while they're in the building. They will be given mask breaks in the classrooms as well as, when they're eating lunch. The mask breaks will not last for any longer than 5 minutes at a time. And this is to ensure the safety and the health of all the other students and the staff in the building. The CDC has said that bandanas and the neck gaiters are not appropriate. So you really want your student to be wearing a mask that covers their nose and their mouth and fits nice and tightly against their face. All the classrooms are set up, like Mr. Doherty said. The classrooms are set up with 6 feet physical distancing so that the mask breaks are going to be available in every classroom. Health office procedures. The health office has been expanded this year. So now I do have an isolation room in the health office that is separate from the well area where I might treat injuries and other things like that. If a student needs to come to the health office, I'm asking that the teachers call me beforehand and let me know what the student might be coming down here for, or what, any kind of symptoms that they may have, so I can prepare and know whether or not they need to be placed in that isolation area when they arrive to the office. Let's see. If a student is exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19, this includes fever, cough, general congestion, any GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, sore throat, shortness of breath, they will be placed in the isolation area. And a phone call will go home, and the student will need to be picked up within 30 minutes of that phone call. It is extremely important that that everyone has their emergency contact information accurate and up to date. If any of your numbers change, if an emergency contact has changed, please make sure that you update the school with that information. So in the event that the student needs to be picked up, it can be done quickly. What is required for your student to return to school after being sick? The New York State Department of Health has 3 requirements if your student is sent home with any kind of a COVID-19 symptom, like the ones I mentioned before. The requirements are that you have a note from your primary care provider stating that the student can return. They will also need a negative COVID test, as well as they need to be symptom-free for 24 hours without the use of any fever-reducing or pain-reducing medications. That includes Tylenol, Advil, Motrin, Aleve, all those types of medications. If there is a possible exposure, if you think that your student has been exposed outside of school, please make sure that you fill out the screening form on the app so that we know that there may have been a possible exposure, and we can follow up with you, the parent. This way, we all kind of are on the same page and we know what's going on. So if there has been a possible exposure at school, the school will be closed for probably a minimum of 24 hours. So that gives us time to do some contact tracing and notify the health department or anything like that. Aside from all the fun COVID stuff, we still do need your physicals and immunizations. If your student has had a physical in the last year, please make sure to get that into the school. Immunizations still need to be up to date by the first 2 weeks of school. So 6th graders require their Tdap booster, and 7th graders require their first meningitis vaccination. These need to be in, again, by the first 2 weeks of school. So by September 21st, they should be up to date on their immunizations. All of this paperwork can be sent to me. You can scan it to me and send it through an email. You can fax it to the school, or you can drop it off. Medications. If your student needs a medication in school, either daily medication or an as-needed medication, a doctor's order needs to be provided before any medications can be administered at school. So this includes any medications they get during the day, as well as things like EpiPens, inhalers, and Advil. Those types of medications all need a doctor's order in order for me to administer them at school. Medications themselves need to be dropped off by a parent or guardian. The student is not allowed to drop off medications to the health office themselves. We will be doing a medication drop off, I believe, next week during the superintendent's days, but an email will go out regarding that. One thing I did want to touch on due to COVID, it's been recommended that if your student has an inhaler or nebulizer, it's preferred to use the inhaler with a spacer here at school as opposed to a nebulizer. The nebulizer treatments aerosolize in the air, and it can just cause a problem that we would rather not have to deal with. So if your student does need a nebulizer compared to an inhaler, just shoot me an email, and we can talk about it. But it is for the school day this year, inhalers are preferred. And again, you're going to get all of this information. If you have any questions that pop up after the orientation, feel free to email me or call me. I'm always available to answer any questions that I may not have answered here. And you will definitely be getting more of this information, so you don't feel too overwhelmed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kars. And as she mentioned, that it is a lot that she's giving you, and you'll get a lot more information next week as well. But just know that we're going to be following all the protocols, and we'll have everything out to you in documents. That'll be something that you can look at and reread and kind of get a better understanding. But we wanted to definitely just get some information out to you today regarding that. So thank you very much, Ms. Kars. Okay, we'll keep going. So I want to talk a little bit about counseling staff. We've got a great counseling staff here at Todd, and here is their contact information. Many of you know these counselors, but for sixth graders, you can see who your counselors are based on your last name. Please email them. That's what we're all here for. So questions, concerns, you can always reach out, whether you call the office or that you email. So it's important that we meet the social emotional needs of all students. We know that, in this environment of a pandemic, with, less socializing, that we know that has a lot of impact on students. It has a lot of impact on adults as well. So, it's important that we're trying to support you and your family and your children as much as possible. So communication is key to that. Social emotional learning, which is about teaching students to be self-aware and to have self-management skills and to be able to work in social, to have social awareness and to be able to build relationship skills. All of those are important pieces of social emotional learning. We kind of use those to try to have students have mature decision-making. We know that middle school is a time where kids don't always make the best decisions. They're still learning, their brains are still growing. There's a lot that they're dealing with. So just know that we understand all that we are teaching students academically, but we're also teaching them, how to adjust in the world. And part of that is social emotional learning. So know that we're working on those things. We're going to have a tune-in Tuesdays during student lunches where we're going to be bringing some social emotional learning methods and games and just check-ins. So we're gonna do different things with that. Mr. Cormier is going to be working on that. So keep an eye out for that. We'll also update you, letting you know what's going on with that. There is a lot of resources that are going to be available. I'm going to reference some of those on the website at the end of the presentation. Our hybrid website is a very important resource for all of you. And I'll show that at the end of the presentation. And also next week, and I'll mention this later too, we are going to send a survey out to both you and students to just get a picture of kind of where you're at as a family, and also where you're at where the student's at, just so we can get information, so we can reach out if needed, and just be able to get a picture of sort of what your experiences have been like since March, because it's been, it has been quite a journey for everybody, in the world, in the country, and then in New York State and here in Dutchess County, right down to here at Todd Middle School. So we want to get information regarding that. So grading. So this is an important slide, and we're going to follow traditional numerical grading for the school year. As you know, in this spring, we went to pass fail, but that was based on having 3 quarters of work already and grades, but we're not going to be able to sustain that first school year. And we're trying to bring as much normalcy into the learning environment as possible. So one of those would be numerical grading, which is 0 for 100 for assignments and 50 to 100 on quarter grades. The final average, we're going to start off with the 4 quarters, and then we'll see what happens with finals and regions. We won't know until later on in the year if they're even going to be given, how to make them be valid. So, and then based on that, we'll decide how we want to factor them into the final grade. You'll see a minimum of at least one graded assignment per week. Most teachers do a few more than that, because during a semester, there's usually, during a quarter, there's usually, let's say, 20 to 30 graded assignments or grades. So that's like 2 or 3 per week. So that's a minimal, just to let you know. But it's important for us, especially for students who are fully remote, that we are, assessing them and getting, being able to track their learning. And it's important that we do that. So we'll be doing that. We'll also try to make sure that our graded assignments are equitable, because we have students that are never coming in the building, and we have students that are going to be in the building 1 day a week. So we want to make sure that we're equitable on those Thursdays and Fridays. When we think about testing, and this is an important thing that, we've been discussing, we want to make sure that tests have equity and parity. Like I said, probably about 1/3 of the students won't be coming. So we want to make sure that the tests that are being done, that it's equitable. And to do that, it makes the most sense to do testing on remote days. So that way the students have the same environment, and they have the same type of test, and it's given in the same way. So we're going to be looking, that's what we're doing going into the school year. Like I've mentioned before, no one has taught like this before. Really, it's not a model that an educator would use. Hybrid learning, where you're teaching kids in your classroom and at their house simultaneously. That's not something that would be typically done by an educator. So we're going to have to see. So there could be adjustments. So just be aware of that. One of the adjustments we're looking at is maybe reducing some of these unit tests. We know that often in subjects you have unit tests that might cover 2 to 4 weeks of material. So maybe we'll be doing smaller ones that cover just a week of material. And that's going to be important, not only for the learner to so we can check in and make sure that they're learning the material, but also for the information that I'm going to talk about in the next slide, which is cheating concerns, right? Because if we're going to do all the tests remotely, remote testing is inherently less secure. So, we're going to have to look at different ways to try to make sure that we are keeping the test valid. Your support would be helpful. I'm going to have a student orientation after this, and I'm going to talk about it to them as well. It's important that we try to maintain as much security in tests as we can. We do have different ways to do that remotely. We can use Google Meets. We can use GoGuardian, which is a program that we use that we can sort of look and see what a student is doing on their computer. We know that we can scramble test questions, things like that. So we know that all of those things we can use and can happen. But we also know that it's certainly not as secure as a student taking a paper test in front of you in a classroom. So we're aware of that. So if we have concerns about cheating that come up, please be understanding and supportive. We're trying to, like I said, do something that's not been done before. Studio art, algebra, and earth science. They may have additional measures. There is it is a little different. They are high school classes that are going to be going on transcripts. So we might be looking at grading and testing a little different for those classes. Late work, similar approach from the spring, at least at Todd Middle School, which is late work needs to be handed in on the due date, but then really after the following, if it's due on any given week, really by the following Monday, 3 p.m., we really need to have that work unless arrangements have been made. Because trying to collect late work and work on things for teachers becomes unmanageable. So at a certain point, we have to say we need to move on with work. So it's very important that your child's in class every day on time and that your child's doing the work and submitting the work when it's due. Okay, breakfast and lunch. The dining hall, which you saw in my tour, is socially distanced with individual desks. There is breakfast with parent permission, and students will have their regular time, lunchtime, while they're here. Safety protocols include that meals are going to be individually wrapped. Staff are sanitation certified, and they're going to be following, the safety protocols that we have now during a pandemic, and that the meal containers and utensils are disposable, so they'll only be used once and thrown out. This is something that I'm considering. This is for 6th graders. We do have 6th grade snack time Sixth grader lunchtime is 12:20. So we have a snack time traditionally. I believe it's around 10:30, 11. They're only coming in one day a week, thinking about, safety reasons and just, trying to teach remotely while students are in the classroom, and then they'll be eating as well. I'm thinking about eliminating the snack, and it could be something that if parents had concerns that maybe the snack could be brought in, but we could figure out for individual students. But it's something you can think about as a sixth grade parent, if you think that, for the one day a week, your child would be able to kind of go through the day through 12:20 without getting a snack. But it's something that I'm considering. So just to let you know, and I'll send more information on that when a decision's been made. Sports and clubs will meet remotely, so we'll be getting information out to students. They're not going to meet in person. I think most clubs are still going to run. We know that clubs and activities are an important predictor of student achievement. So basically, if you belong to a club or a sport, the chance of you having higher achievement is there. So we want students to be connected to the school. We want them in clubs and in activities, so they'll be available. We'll be sending out plenty of information on that. They'll be in our AM announcements. They'll also be on that remote site that I referenced before that I'll show you at the end of the slide. We traditionally have a club and activities fair, and we're going to do that as well. We'll do that a little later. We usually do it a little earlier, but there's so much to kind of get ready that I want to give teachers and club advisors time to get ready. So we're going to do that in early October, where they'll be able to kind of meet club members and get to know what clubs do, and then they can join them. But they'll be able to join them earlier. As soon as the school begins, we'll be sending out information about when clubs are meeting. And I mentioned full sports. It's supposed to start on the 21st. The latest I'm hearing is that we will not have sports, though, that are modified. So that would mean most of our students would not be involved, but there could be. We'll see. Those are the low-risk sports that are being considered. But that's subject to change, and you'll get information either from Todd or from Mr. Lanzoni's office regarding sports. Attendance, I've mentioned this a couple of times. Attendance is very important. Attending all classes is required, and attendance is taken during every class period, every instructional period. Now, I'll talk about what that means in a later slide. But basically, all your classes, the student needs to be at. Cameras need to be on for attendance, and then meeting on Google Meet. And then the remainder of the period, they're going to follow teachers' directions. So one of the things that we saw in the spring, and you probably saw that as a parent if you were ever looking in on your student's classroom, you may have noticed that many of the students' cameras were turned off. And that's not going to be something that is going to be sustainable if we're doing synchronous learning and the teacher's requiring interaction and cameras on. So we know that, students at this age don't want to be on camera. They might not want to, if they're in their bedroom, they might not want to show their bedroom on camera. So we understand that those are concerns, but we'll have to find a balance because it's important that the cameras are on when teachers require it. Okay. They're definitely going to need them on at the beginning of every period because that's when they're walking into the room, taking attendance. And we need to know that students are in class. Okay. I mentioned homeroom attendance is only taken for those homeroom classes. The homeroom attendance will be required for all in-person classes at Todd. We're going to, similar to what we've been doing, an email will go out. It used to be a phone call. We're going to do it as an email if your child is missing from period 1 or 2 classes. So that'll be both for remote and for in-person. And then we're going to send out an attendance email at the end of the day to just give you an update as if your child was tardy or absent for the day, and we'll direct you to check parent portal. So it's important, very, very important for remote learners that you are making sure that your child understands that they need to be in class at the time, camera on so they can take attendance and ready to learn. It's not going to be asynchronous for them at all, really. So it's going to be more synchronous. So just be aware of that. Okay. And I've given you the email or the phone number to call when you have attendance issues. Okay. So we've gone over homerooms pretty good. I think we're good with those. Let's encore classes. They'll meet quarterly as always. So some classes have already sent home materials. And that will happen throughout the year. So for your fully remote students, you'll get phone calls or emails from the main office saying, hey, the art teacher has, materials for you to pick up, and then ask you to come and pick them up. And students do not have to attend study hall, which we call Todd Time, remotely. So only in-person study halls at the school are going to require students to attend. So that's going to be one of those, I said, instructional periods only. So Todd Time study hall isn't really an instructional period. So students don't have to go to that particular class remotely. The physical education classes, like the other odd even classes, will be seen in person every other week. And you'll see, if you look at the schedule, I didn't go into this in depth when we talked about odd even days, but the way odd even days work is the in-person isn't going to be, it's going to be every other week for that odd even class. And if you go through the schedule, you'll see what I mean. I don't want to spend time trying to explain it all here, but you just follow the schedule. Locker rooms are not going to be used for PE. Any activity will be low risk, socially distant, mask friendly, but they are requiring a mask during PE. Obviously, taking students outside is good, so we'll try to do that as much as possible. But again, part of that is that we also have to furnish PE instruction for the remote learner. So that would be something that they might set up. Tell the remote learners what they're going to be doing during the class period, and then at the end come in and check in with them when they have the Wi-Fi again, something like that. Honor and merit roll will continue, and I give you the breakdown for that. The honor roll breakfast will continue. We did that last year. We did it remotely. Maybe we'll do it in person. We'll have to see what the rest of the year in the spring looks like. And the National Junior Honor Society, just a reminder of the criteria for that. Okay, I'm not going to go over this in depth, but you can just take a look at that. But needless to say that our new librarian, Mrs. Thornton, we are very happy and excited that she's with us. She's given you lots of information about virtual library and circulation of books. She's also given you information on the next slide regarding the use of space and information with that. So we'll be, and actually we were working on, I'm in the library now, we're working on it of moving tables around, making more space. We don't know if we're going to be able to fit a class in here necessarily like we usually do, because the librarian's very, in some schools, librarians aren't used that much. That is not the case at Todd. Ms. Cunningham, our previous librarian, and Ms. Thorne, they're very involved in instruction. But just know that this space will be available to students, and obviously we'll be practicing all social distancing and practicing protocols for return of books and all of those things. I'll say you're in very good hands with Ms. Thorne. Okay, I talked about some of this. So the first two bullets, the supply list. So we did send out supply lists, but probably I had some inquiries. You might have looked at those and go, that's a lot of supplies for coming in one day a week. So you may want to wait. If you haven't already, you could wait. It's fine. You can wait. We have some remote days before students come. Wait and see what the teacher provides over the next 5 days. Over the next 5 days when school begins from September 10th to September 16th, what the supplies are. And if you haven't gone already, it's fine, because many schools are remote, so supplies, should be available. I mentioned the other information regarding pickup by parents. These are important website addresses. I'm going to wait till the end of the slide to show you the Todd Hybrid Learning website, but that's a really important website. That's basically our up-to-date website that gives you material on a daily basis. So that's really important website. You might want to, bookmark that as a go-to place. Staffing updates. I'm not going to read through all of these, but I just wanted to give you an update. I will say that the two hires that we're trying to do from Ms. Berube and from Mrs. Ackert, we have interviews lined up. So I'm hoping that'll actually happen sooner rather than later. So we're excited about that. And we're also excited to have all of these new staff members with us. Some quick reminders here. One is that if you wish to have an in-person tour tomorrow, that you need to make an appointment. I made the video to kind of, we're still getting the school ready. So, we like to still limit people in the school, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I didn't want to not give that opportunity to families. So if you want to come in, you can. But like I said, see the video. And if you and your child kind of see the video, like, okay, we can do this without coming in, that'd be helpful. And then don't forget, if you're a 6th grade parent, the first 2 days, the first day that your child comes in, there's only going to be 6th grade in the building. So basically those dates, the 17th and 18th, are basically like entire 6th grade orientation tour days. So that's why, I didn't want to have to have kids come in this week because that 6th grade, the most important one, is going to have the building to themselves the first 2 days that they come in. If you haven't picked up your Chromebook, please come and pick it up today or tomorrow. We'll be sending out a school messenger on Tuesday, which I mentioned before, we're going to give some social emotional health tips and coping strategies along with that survey that I mentioned. And remote learners, a reminder that they may be asked to pick up materials throughout the quarter. And then final reminders. So you've got the first day of school is a week from today, Thursday, September 10th. All grades are learning remotely those first 5 days. So from the 10th through the 16th, no one's coming to Todd. Everyone's learning remotely. Then on the 17th and 18th is 6th grade only. You see the breakdown. And then the following week, September 24th and 25th, that's when everybody comes, 6, 7, and 8. So I hope that's clear to everybody, those kind of bulleting those first couple of days into the first 2 weeks of school. And with that, I'm going to first just put up that website. Mr. Cormier is just going to pull down our, that was the last slide, right, Mr. Cormier? And then we've got our contact information. So the ones on top are how you can update your contact information. And the ones at the bottom are the various contacts that we have. And this information, along with this slide and this video that you're seeing now, are all going to be on the website that Mr. Cormier is going to pull up right now for us. He's working on it. So this is the remote website. So if you scroll to the top a little, Mr. Cormier. There we go. So that's kind of what it looks like. If you don't have this link already, if you go to the Todd website, the regular one, it's gonna have a link to this. So then if you scroll down a little, Mr. Cormier, you'll see that we've got lots of information. Like here's the information for this morning. There's going to be videos. There's going to be important information. So that's a very important website. So I just wanted to kind of bring this to everybody's attention. Okay, you can see there's my tour of the building video. So all the information we have up there, you'll see schedules, important links. So it's a good way to just kind of, this is what's going on at Todd. This is what it looks like. Because, especially since we have fully remote learners and learners who are only coming in once a week, obviously communication is really important. So that's like a great way to get all the communication from the school. And please communicate back to us, because it's important that we know sort of if you have any questions, concerns, ways to help, because different from when in person, if, we're going to be checking in with students, but it's really important. You're going to be a very important person for us, especially for fully remote learners, to keep us up on, how you're feeling things are going for your student and any concerns that you may have. Okay, so why don't we go to the questions? I know that there's been some questions coming in during this. I'm going to take a look at some of these. First question was regarding textbooks. So yeah, they're going to be in various subjects. Textbooks will go home, and typically they stay home for the year. So that'll continue to happen. And again, remote learners, you'll be able to come and pick up your textbooks here. Someone is requesting a new parent session at Todd. I think that's a great idea, and I think that I could probably do that maybe next Wednesday. So I'm going to work on that and see if I can maybe do something where I'm Google Meet, where it could be kind of like we all get together and it could be more interactive. This obviously is going one way. A Google Meet I can open to 250 people at once. So maybe we'll do that next week. Communicating with teachers, best way is through their email. So you can see that that's on our website. You can get emails, and also that information is probably on Google Classroom as well. So checking in, looking over your child's shoulder while they're working on Google Classroom, basically like peeking into the classroom. So you can, if you want to see what your student's doing, what's assigned, what's going on, how the teacher's communicating, all of that is on Google Classroom. But their emails are all available too. Okay, and I'm pretty sure on our website that I just showed you, if you scroll down, I'm pretty sure we've got we do it by department, so you can find everybody. You can find their website, and you can find their email. So how do odd and even days work on Fridays? The simple ways is just follow schedule. So if it's an even day, student will follow the even schedule. If it's an odd day, student will follow the odd schedule. The only thing is that if they had an even class one week, they're going to have the odd class the next week. So some classes like health or like PE in person is going to be every 2 weeks. The students will not change clothes during PE. They will be wearing masks during physical activity. So I've got a question about if a parent works in New York City and we're calling up saying you need to get your child, what happens after 30 minutes? And that's something that we'll work on protocols for that. But because we know that those situations will happen, so we'll work on that over the next week to get some protocols in place for that. And a parent asked about multiple. So if you have, because we do have a quarantine room. So if there was issues where we say had multiple students, we would find other areas in the building to quarantine. But just know that when we have situations like this, we have what's called a medical hold in place. So if we have something where we need to move students or staff members for whatever reason, the students are used to it. We practice it where students know if you call a medical hold in place, nobody's leaving the room. We're able to move a student to where we need to move them, make sure that everybody's safe before we, call off the medical hold in place. So again, we'll be working on the protocols with that, and I think we'll be in good shape for things like that. So and I'm sorry, I'm reading these as I see them. So just to clarify, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday only, there will be a break between period 5 and 6 in addition to the student's lunch period. Is this correct? Yes, that is correct. So we've kind of built in a little more time because I know probably for some of you, I'm coming up on an hour. So you've been looking at, if you've been watching this the whole time, you've been watching this for an hour. Now picture doing that, but also doing work, right? Because you're doing schoolwork. So students need breaks and adults need breaks. So that's why we built that in the middle of the day. And we are going to, that time can be used for other things. It can be used for social emotional activities that we're thinking about doing, but it also can be used for things like music lessons. So we are exploring how to use that time. So it might not be only sort of like break time. It might be time that we do some additional things. So this may need Ms. Cars, if she's still in the background there. So the way this works, as she is, we can bring her back up. So I'll read this question to you, Ms. Cars. If my child has a cough due to asthma or headache and is sent home, is the COVID test mandatory to return to school? According to Mr. Molinaro, the test is not mandatory. If the student does not take the test, would they just return to school after being home 10 days? Can you comment on this?
So this is a common question among all of the buildings. There's been some discrepancies between our local health department and the state health department and the SED guidelines. They all kind of say something a little bit different. According to the New York State guidelines, they do require a COVID test. Regardless of their chronic condition, I can't tell as a nurse, I'm not allowed to diagnose. And I'm licensed through New York State. So those are the guidelines that we have to follow. We are looking and we're constantly trying to contact the state department and our local department to get clarity on this. Because I do understand there's students with asthma and migraines. And, if you can if you can't anticipate as much as possible, you know, if you know your child's having an asthma flare up, definitely keep them home. So, but we are still working on getting distinct clarity between whether or not they do require the COVID test if the doctor, if their own, you know, primary doctor says, you know, I know this patient and they don't, it's just their asthma, it's just their migraine. As it stands right now, they do require the test, but we are still looking into it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And how secure, well, you might want to keep her on there. So, how secure is the app that we'll be using to report the health status every day? Why was a third-party app chosen over an in-house Google form? So you understand what they're asking. Why are we going to, because we could do this with a Google form.
Right. There were a lot of different options that we had looked into for the screening. This app in particular doesn't give any specific health information. They're just yes or no questions. And if they're all, you know, good to go, it just says, hey, this student's good to go. The only thing we would be notified on is if you had answered negatively to any of the, you know, the yes or no questions saying they could have possibly been exposed or they've traveled outside of the state to, or the country or whatnot. But the security of it, I know Liz Giancaspro and Kathy Hoey have been working very, very hard on trying to find a specific application that will work among the district and for everybody and make it as easy as possible for all the parents. So I can't imagine that it wouldn't be secure with as much as do it all summer long.
Sure, understood. And usually things, because it's more user friendly, probably can work better on phones or whatever. I'm assuming that's part of it, as opposed to like a Google form.
Yep.
Okay. Next question is about lockers. That, you know, will they be carrying things in their backpack? And are they going to require to bring their binders to school each day? I think that they're going to carry backpacks. That we're going to try to limit how much materials they have to bring. Those are all good questions. I think looking at as we begin the school year, what that looks like. Good questions. I think probably I need to look at that a little more and get back to you with a fuller answer. I don't want to kind of give you an answer completely off the cuff here. So, but it's something that we know that we can't use lockers, and we know that students need materials. So kind of next week, maybe having some discussions with teachers will help me as well. Part of the issue of getting ready and why you've gotten so much information at once is because it hasn't been easy to work things out, because teachers aren't always available, you know, because they're not here and they're not supposed to be here. So, but next week we'll have teachers back in and I can work on that a little more. So this is about page 40 of the CDC's recommendations from August 26th. So I would just highlight that question, Tina, or that's a very specific question that I'm not prepared to answer. We'll have to get back to you on that. This one, how do students with symptoms related to COVID stay in school if they present with symptoms attributed to a health condition related to COVID? Oh, sorry. How do students with symptoms unrelated to COVID stay in school if they present with symptoms attributed to a health condition related to COVID? So this goes back to the same thing, which it sounds to me like what we're saying is it's unclear what to do about prior conditions. So if you already know a student has a condition and the student is symptomatic of that condition, it sounds to me that the guidelines are, it doesn't matter. We're treating it as if they didn't have a condition, because we don't know. Is that correct, Nurse Cars?
Yes. So everything's related to COVID as we know it here. So
Okay.
if you have a chronic condition like asthma and you're coughing, there's no way for me to tell if that's their asthma or if that's COVID related, and I can't make that distinction.
Right, and in a pandemic situation, we wouldn't want to make assumptions.
Right. Exactly.
I would think so. So that's going to be something. And again, you know, and I've alluded to this a few times. just like hybrid teaching is something that's never been done before. Operating schools, you know, in this way, in a pandemic situation has never been done before. So we don't know if we're going to have we don't know what the nurse's office is going to look like. We don't know if, you know, the first day we have 15 students who are giving symptoms that show COVID-like symptoms. We don't know. You know, obviously your help of making sure that students are staying home when they should be, and, you know, not sending not sending your child to the building when they're ill or symptomatic is important. That would be helpful. So if your child's symptomatic, don't have them come to school. Ms. Cars, does that sound right?
Yep, absolutely.
This is another one about this will not order a test simply because a child was sent home with a headache, but the district medical director said in one of their presentations they are not making any exceptions to this policy. So again, let's get more clarity on this. We'll get back to you on this. So, you know, some of these very specific COVID, when you have someone who's symptomatic, what does it look like? What exactly are we doing? I think that we need more clarity on that, and we'll get that to you. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So okay. I must, it looks like I messed up. I'm sorry about that. Looks like I put one of the A to Z, and so Mrs. Canburn's LZ, and I put her as AK. So no, Mrs. Canburn did not change all of her students. Mr. Doherty changed the PowerPoint slide. So I apologize. Can students bring in their lunches from home, or are they all provided students? So no, it's fun, and I'll verify that, but and that's a good no, students can bring in lunches from home. That is, I'll make sure of that, but I'll put something out to verify that. But yes, no, they can bring in lunch. When will we find out about bus schedules and pickup times? That information is coming from the district office. You should be getting that later this week or early next week. The bus schedule and pickup times should be similar to what they've always been. Obviously, if this is a 6th grade student or parent, sorry, that would be something that would be new for you. But that information is going out. I know they've been waiting. It's a little later than normal because they've been waiting to match the bus routes up to the students based on who's actually coming in the building. So they've been kind of waiting on us to finish up telling them who the remote students are. So that should be coming shortly. Will Todd time teachers be available to students on Google Meet if students have questions, even though it's an optional meeting? No, I mean, I'm not planning to do that. It's something that I could, think about and look into. Not a bad idea. The thing about, say, not having Todd times here is if during Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? If there's no Todd time, what it does is it gives us the ability to use teachers in different ways, though that could be one way that a teacher's used during what would have been their remote, what's called their duty, because that's what teachers are basically assigned different things throughout the day in addition to the 5 periods they teach. So, but that's not a bad idea, something that I'll think about. Thank you for the question. Yes, we are trying to get the graphing calculators to algebra students next week. So they came with docking stations, so we had to order cords. So we've ordered the charging cords. So we're waiting on the charging cords. Once we get those in, we will then ask that the remote, well, actually all algebra students come and pick up calculators with the charging cords. Yeah, good question. So on the first day of school, that Thursday, Friday, and that's a great question. I'll have to clarify that on Tuesday in my message. But yes, they are following the remote schedule the first 5 days of school. So even though that Thursday, Friday is, an in-school day, no one's coming in school the first Thursday, Friday, the 10th and 11th. So those 2 days will be following the remote schedule. That's an excellent question. Question about modifications to the student chat feature. I know the student chat is monitored by the teacher. Don't know if Google maybe added some things to it. I know one of the other things that we were hoping Google would add were breakout rooms, because that way you can do sort of group work, and the teacher can actually still supervise the group work remotely. So that's something we're looking at. I don't know if, I know that teachers modify the student chat, meaning you can't put anything in the student chat without, my permission, or they can have a student kind of man the student chat while the person's teaching. But I don't know of any like electronic modifications. If you've got a Chromebook camera not working question. So on the remote website that I showed you before, there is a little link for tech help for students, and you can actually do that. But if you try and you can't manage that, or you need help, you can always send an email to Todd main office, and we can follow up on that. If a student starts as a hybrid, can we switch to full remote anytime? No. So we are having, so the hybrid, what you've put in in the questionnaire, in the survey, is going to be throughout the first quarter. So about 2 weeks before the end of first quarter, you can then, at that point, I don't know if we're going to do another questionnaire, but you should be staying as hybrid throughout the quarter. Bus schedule, I mentioned that should be going out soon. The app, I'm not sure the name of the app. I'm not sure if Alyssa if Ms. Cars knows the name of the app, but I'm assuming it's going to be on the App Store. It looks like it's called Pinpoint. Does that sound right, Ms. Cars?
Yeah, Liz said it's called Pinpoint. You just kind of picked it, so I don't know exactly, but there will be information coming out within the week about that.
Great. And this is an excellent question, which actually goes to the other question that somebody was asking. If you keep your child home because maybe they didn't feel well, can they sign on to remote learning that day? Absolutely. They can do that. And I'm also thinking about, the question of, the in-person versus remote. Well, we'll see. As far right now, you can't change from going from in-person to remote, or vice versa till the end of the first quarter. But if your child didn't feel well, they could certainly sign in that day remotely. Absolutely. And I think right now, that's the questions for now. So it is, you've been with me for about an hour and 10 minutes. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your questions. I hope this helped and provided some clarity. I know that there's still, other questions that people have, and there's also safety concerns. Know that we're going to continue to work. Part of the phase-in model is that, we have an additional week before students come in. And like I said, that first week is only the 6th grade students. So we'll really be able to work on protocols and have, everything ready to go so that your child is safe, hopefully happy, and ready to learn. And also, I want you to know for the fully remote learners that we look at them just like they're the students who are in front of us in the building. There's no difference. So I just want to be clear with that. Fully remote learner is important to us as the students that are coming in. I know a lot of the focus is on the students coming in to a certain extent because of the safety concerns. But I want the fully remote parents to know that your child is as important to me as any other child, and that, our job is and what we expect is that we're giving quality education to all learners in all modes. And I've said this before, and I'll say it to anyone who asks me, the Todd Middle School teaching staff, the teachers, everyone who supports them, whether they're paraprofessionals, whether they're teaching assistants, whatever they are, everyone in this building, I am very proud of, and I know that you can feel safe and secure that your child's in good hands, and that we're going to make sure that they're safe, that they're learning, and that they're happy, and that they're growing. And we appreciate your support. I appreciate you spending the time this morning, or maybe you're watching it this evening. And please continue to send questions to that email, and I will continue to address them and probably put my answers up on that remote site that I've mentioned a number of times. Okay. So thank you so much. Just remind your student, your child, that we're going to have the 11 o'clock at 11 o'clock, just in a couple of minutes, I'm going to be on with the 6th grade. And then, and that's not just going to be me. So I'll get a little break. It'll be, we'll have counselors, teachers. And then we've got at 1 p.m., we've got the 7th grade. And at 2 p.m., we have the 8th grade. So thank you so much. Enjoy the end of your summer. I look forward to seeing your children. And I appreciate you spending the time this morning with me. Thank you.